I still remember the exact moment I stopped breathing, not because I couldn't, but because I didn't want to, because whatever was on that screen in front of me had just knocked the air out of my chest like a punch I never saw coming, and even now, as I sit here trying to tell you this story, my fingers are trembling just thinking about it. It started like any other Tuesday night. I'd gotten home from work a little later than usual, traffic on the 405 was a mess, and I was too exhausted to fight it, so I stopped at that little Thai place near the gas station and brought home takeout. I remember standing in our kitchen, placing the steaming containers onto plates like some kind of ritual I'd gotten used to over the years, and then I noticed it, her phone, sitting on the countertop, unlocked. That alone wasn't unusual. Jenna trusted me, or at least I thought she did, and I trusted her too, but something about that night felt off. Maybe it was the way she barely looked at me when I walked in the door, or how she muttered, "Hey," without even turning her head, eyes glued to her laptop as if the emails from work were more urgent than acknowledging her husband. Maybe it was nothing, but my gut told me otherwise. I don't normally go through her phone, I'm not that guy, or at least I didn't used to be, but something compelled me to glance at the screen, just a quick look, just a peek, and that's when I saw it. A message. Room 715. Same time. Can't stop thinking about last night. I stood there, frozen, rice steaming under my fingertips, and I stared at the name attached to that message, Mason D., and it didn't register at first, not until I remembered who Mason D. was, not until I heard his name enough times in our house to know it by heart. Mason Daniels, the director, the golden boy of Westfield Studios, the one who Jenna always said was difficult but brilliant, the one whose shows won Emmys, the one she stayed late with for post-production meetings. I didn't say anything that night. I couldn't, because if I opened my mouth, I was afraid I'd scream or shatter or do something that couldn't be undone, so instead, I handed her a plate of food and sat across from her at the table like nothing was wrong, like I hadn't just watched my whole marriage flicker like a dying signal on a broken TV screen. "You okay?" she asked me halfway through dinner, barely glancing up. "Long day," I said, and I smiled, God, I even smiled, and she went back to eating like everything was fine. That night, while she showered, I went through the rest of the messages, my heart thudding so loud I could barely hear myself think, and what I found made me sick. Weeks, maybe even months of messages, each one more intimate than the last, little confessions, secret rendezvous, compliments about how she looked on set, inside jokes I wasn't a part of, things I hadn't heard her say to me in years. But it wasn't just the affair that gutted me, it was how careful they were, how calculated, meeting in hotels downtown under fake names, booking rooms through burner apps, deleting texts and calls, except this time, she forgot to delete one. Maybe she got too comfortable, maybe she never thought I'd notice. I spent the whole night lying next to her in bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to the soft sound of her breathing, and wondering how someone I loved this much could get me so silently, so cleanly. The next morning, I called in sick to work, told them I had a fever, told them I couldn't make it in, and then I started making calls to the hotel to confirm if a Mr. Daniels had a reservation that week, to a friend of mine who worked in private security, the kind of guy who installs cameras for a living and owes me more than a few favors. I told him I needed a setup, discreet, mobile, and fast. I had a plan, not just to catch them, but to destroy them, because I knew Jenna, I knew her career meant everything to her. She wasn't just a producer, she was the face of an entire new wave at the network, the future of TV, they called her. She hosted panels, gave speeches, she was the one they photographed at premieres while I stood off to the side, smiling like the proud husband, the quiet shadow. But not this time. This time I was going to make sure the spotlight hit the truth. When Friday came, I pretended I was going out of town, told her I had a conference in San Diego and wouldn't be back until Sunday night. She kissed me on the cheek, told me to travel safe, and that was the moment I knew she was planning to meet him again, probably even had her bag packed already. I followed her that evening, parked across from the downtown Hilton with my phone recording the entire time. I watched her enter through the side entrance, sunglasses on like she was some kind of celebrity avoiding the paparazzi. And then, 20 minutes later, Mason arrived, dressed in a baseball cap and hoodie, like that made a difference. They thought they were invisible, that nobody knew, but I knew, and now, the camera did too. I waited until they were in the room, until the signal from the hidden camera in the hallway synced with the feed on my laptop, and when I saw the door close, saw them together in that space, I hit record, my hand steady, my heart anything but. The footage was clean, sharp, and undeniable, no nudity, but enough to ruin them both. The way they kissed, the way they whispered, the laughter, the intimacy, it was all there, and it made me want to scream, but I didn't, not yet. Because I had one more move left to make, something that would make sure they felt it, not just in private, but in front of every person who ever put them on a pedestal. And that's when I thought of Paul. Paul was a studio technician at Westfield, someone Jenna barely noticed, the kind of guy who handled live feeds, graphics, emergency signals, the invisible hands behind the screen. I'd met him once at a Christmas party, bonded over baseball, traded numbers, and even helped him fix a plumbing issue at his place last year. I called him that night. "Paul, I need a favor," I said. "What kind of favor?" he asked, suspicious but curious. "The kind that comes with $5,000 and no questions." Silence, then a slow, cautious, "Go on." I told him what I needed, a 30-second interruption during the Friday Night Live segment of Behind the Spotlight, the entertainment segment Jenna ran, the one that aired just before prime time and pulled in millions of viewers across the country. I needed my footage spliced in, just long enough to be unmistakable, undeniable, and unforgettable. He didn't say yes right away, but he didn't hang up either. And by the next morning, I had my answer. It was on. They had no idea what was coming. But they would. They all would. Because some betrayals deserve more than silence, more than a quiet breakup or a messy divorce. Some betrayals deserve an audience. And I was going to give them one. The hardest part wasn't what I saw on that screen. It wasn't the way Jenna tilted her head when Mason leaned in, or the casual way they joked between kisses, like they were two people in a world that didn't include me at all. The hardest part was pretending that everything was normal afterward. That morning, I made coffee for her, placed it next to her laptop just like I always did, and when she glanced up and smiled, that same distracted, polite smile, I wondered how long she'd been doing this. How many mornings had I been the fool in this story without even realizing it? "You heading to the studio today?" I asked, keeping my voice even, light, as if I hadn't spent the last 48 hours plotting the downfall of the woman I once swore to grow old with. She nodded, stirring her coffee with one of those little gold spoons she insisted we keep. "Yeah, big episode tonight. Mason wants to shoot a few extra takes for the promo spot." "Of course he does." I almost laughed, but I didn't. Instead, I leaned down and kissed her forehead, my lips touching her skin like a lie I was too proud to confess. "Good luck," I said. And I meant it. Because luck was the only thing that might save her now. That afternoon I met with Paul again, this time in person, tucked into the back corner of a grimy little diner 2 blocks from the studio. He looked nervous, twitchy, like someone who'd seen something he shouldn't have and knew it would follow him for the rest of his life. "You sure about this?" he asked, glancing around like someone might be listening. "Play the clip for exactly 30 seconds, I told him, sliding the flash drive across the table. "No more, no less, cut to black after, and let the regular broadcast resume." He nodded, not meeting my eyes. "If this gets traced back to me." "It won't," I interrupted, my voice lower now, steady and cold in a way that even surprised me. "I've covered your tracks, and you've got nothing linking you to the source. You're just a guy who hit the wrong button at the wrong time." He swallowed hard, then picked up the drive like it was made of acid, tucked it into his coat, and stood. Neither of us said goodbye. There wasn't anything left to say. I spent the rest of the day watching the clock, every second dragging by like it was stuck in molasses. I kept playing the scene over and over in my head, not the footage itself, but the moment, the exact second the image would flicker onto millions of TV screens. People across the country would be tuning in to hear Jenna deliver her signature line, "This is Behind the Spotlight, I'm Jenna Moore." Except tonight, there would be no spotlight, no pretense. Just static. And then the truth. I sat alone in my apartment, lights off, phone face down, everything quiet except the low hum of the television as I waited for 7:59 to turn into 8 o'clock. The moment the show began, I felt my pulse thunder through my ears like a warning drum, but I didn't look away. I stared, wide-eyed, as the screen lit up with the familiar graphics, glitzy, polished, like the kind of lie you learn to trust after enough years. Jenna's face appeared, polished and poised as always. She opened her mouth to speak. And then it happened. The screen glitched. Just a flicker at first, almost nothing, the kind of hiccup no one would think twice about. But then came the footage. Not edited, not narrated, just raw. Jenna and Mason, laughing in that dimly lit hotel room. Her voice, soft and playful. His hand brushing hair from her face. A kiss. And then her words, "I wish I could stay here forever with you." It lasted exactly 30 seconds. Then the screen went black. Then static. Then, as if nothing had happened, the show resumed. Jenna was still talking, unaware of what had just aired, but the damage was done. I watched as the social media feeds exploded within minutes. Clips circulating on every platform. People asking, was that real? Is that Jenna Moore? Isn't that the director? The hashtag behind the affair started trending in under 20 minutes. And then the studio pulled the episode. They tried to scrub it. But it was too late. The internet never forgets. My phone buzzed with call after call. First Jenna. Then her producer. Then Mason. I let them all go to voicemail. I didn't want to hear their excuses. Not yet. Not while I still had the image of them seared into my brain like a scar that would never fade. Around midnight, someone knocked on my door. It was Jenna, eyes wide, makeup smudged, phone in her hand. Did you do this? She demanded, voice shaking with something between rage and fear. I didn't answer. I just stepped aside and let her come in. She walked in circles around the living room like she didn't know where to begin. This is career-ending, she snapped. Do you understand what you've done? Oh, I understand exactly, I said, finally meeting her eyes. You ended our marriage the second you decided to sleep with him. I just returned the favor. Her face fell. For a second, the anger slipped. Replaced by something like guilt, or maybe regret, I couldn't tell anymore. I made a mistake, she said, quieter now. It wasn't supposed to happen like this. It was complicated. No, I said, walking toward her, it was simple. Jenna, you lied, you cheated, and you thought I wouldn't find out, or maybe you didn't care if I did. She sat on the edge of the couch, hands in her lap like a child waiting to be punished. I didn't mean to hurt you, she whispered. But you did, I replied. Every day you saw me and chose not to tell me the truth, you hurt me. And for the first time in months, she had no script, no lines, no rehearsed apology. Just silence. I didn't yell. Didn't scream. Because this quiet wreckage, was louder than any fight we could have had. She eventually left. Didn't say goodbye. Just closed the door gently behind her. And as I stood alone in the apartment that still smelled faintly of her perfume, I realized something. The truth might have set me free. But it also left me hollow. I got what I wanted. Revenge. Justice. Whatever you want to call it. But the part of me that loved her. That trusted her. That believed in the woman I thought I married. That part was gone now. Burned away in 30 seconds of truth. And nothing would ever bring it back. The days that followed felt like I was living underwater, like everything around me moved slower, sounded muted, like someone had dialed down the world's volume but left my own thoughts blaring at full blast. The footage had done exactly what I knew it would. Destroyed them. Publicly, completely, and without mercy. The studio suspended the show indefinitely, which was just corporate speak for, we're cutting our losses. Jenna's face, once plastered across billboards and subway ads, vanished overnight. Mason. He released a carefully worded statement about taking a leave of absence to focus on personal matters, but it didn't matter. Everyone knew what that meant. His career was over. I should have felt triumphant. I should have looked in the mirror and seen a man who'd stood up for himself. But all I saw was someone who had nothing left. No wife. No home that felt like home. Just a pile of broken pieces and no idea where to begin putting them back together. Jenna tried calling again. And again. And again. I didn't answer. Not at first. But on the fifth night, when I couldn't sleep, and the silence of my apartment pressed down on me like a weight, I picked up. Her voice came through the line like a ghost I hadn't quite buried. Thank you for answering, she said softly, as if even she was surprised I had. I didn't respond, just let her speak. There was a long pause. Then. I deserve everything that happened, I know that. Still, I stayed quiet. Because hearing her admit it, it didn't change anything. The wound was still open. Still bleeding. I want to talk to you, she said, face to face, just once, not about blame, not about the show, just us. Part of me wanted to hang up. But another part, the part that remembered lazy Sundays and shared jokes and the way she used to fall asleep with her hand on my chest like it was her anchor. That part whispered, you owe yourself closure. We met at a small cafe across town. Neutral ground. No memories tied to the place. No ghost sitting beside us in the booths. She looked different. Not in any obvious way, she still had her usual lipstick, her hair still in that sleek ponytail. But the light behind her eyes was gone. She looked like someone trying to hold herself together with invisible thread. "Before you say anything," she said, sitting down across from me, "I need to tell you something." I nodded once, arms crossed, jaw tight. "I didn't fall for Mason because he was younger or because he was the director," she said, "I fell because I felt like I was fading." I blinked. "What the hell does that mean?" I asked, my voice low but sharp. She looked down, fingers trembling around her coffee cup. "I was scared," she admitted, "of getting older, of being irrelevant, of waking up one day and realizing I wasn't special anymore." "So you decided cheating would make you feel special?" I snapped, the bitterness rushing out before I could stop it. "No," she said quickly, "it wasn't about that, not entirely, it was about feeling seen again, and Mason." He looked at me like I still mattered. I shook my head. "So what was I doing all that time?" "Just background noise." Her eyes filled with tears, but I didn't feel sorry. "Not this time. Not after everything. You were always there," she said, "too there, dependable, steady, kind, and I think I took that for granted." I laughed bitterly. "You think?" Silence fell between us like a curtain. Thick, heavy, and final. Then she said something I didn't expect. "I never stopped loving you." I stared at her. This woman who had torn my life apart. This woman who claimed to love me while slipping between hotel sheets with someone else. "You have a funny way of showing it," I muttered. She reached into her bag, pulled out something small and rectangular, a photo. Us, from our second anniversary. Smiling, tipsy on wine, her head leaning against mine. She pushed it toward me. "I keep this in my wallet, even now." I didn't touch it. Didn't look at it long. Because I knew if I did, I might remember too much. "I'm not here to beg," she said. "I know I don't have the right to ask for anything, but I wanted to tell you that the version of me that did this, she's gone, burned away by what I lost." I finally looked at her, really looked. And for a moment, I saw not the woman who betrayed me, but the woman I fell in love with before the cameras, before the fame, before the cracks. "I can't forgive you," I said, and it felt like ripping something out of my chest. "Not yet, maybe not ever." She nodded slowly, accepting it without protest. "I just needed you to know that I regret it, every single second." And then she stood. And walked away. Just like that. No grand scene. No shouting. No last-minute tears or pleas. Just the quiet exit of someone who finally understood the cost of what they'd done. That night, I stared at the photo she left behind. My fingers hovering over it, never quite touching. I thought about who we were back then. And who I was now. A man who had lost his wife, yes. But also a man who had found something in the wreckage. A kind of clarity. A kind of strength I never knew I had. The world kept moving. The headlines changed. People moved on to the next scandal, the next betrayal, the next public fall. But me. I stayed still. Not stuck. Just steady. For the first time in a long while, I wasn't chasing anything. Not revenge. Not answers. Not even love. Just peace. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough. You'd think after all that, after catching my wife cheating, exposing her on live television, and watching her career disintegrate in real time, I'd feel something final, something solid. But the truth is, closure isn't a moment, it's not a switch you flip or a door you slam shut. It's slower than that, quieter. It sneaks up on you in the silence between thoughts, in the way you look at your reflection and don't quite recognize who's staring back. For weeks after our meeting at the cafe, I didn't talk to Jenna again. She stopped calling. Maybe she finally realized there was nothing left to say, or maybe she just accepted that the wreckage we caused couldn't be swept up into something recognizable again. My apartment, once filled with the hum of life, her voice in the kitchen, the clinking of wine glasses, the sound of late-night laughter, was now just walls and furniture. I couldn't stand the silence anymore. So I filled it with work. I threw myself into projects I'd left untouched for years, freelance contracts, consultations, whatever I could get my hands on. I worked until my eyes burned and my fingers ached. Because as long as I was working, I didn't have to think about the version of my life that had died the moment I pressed play on that footage. But it always caught up to me. At night, especially. There's something about darkness and stillness that peels away the distractions, and then there you are, just you and your mistakes. I'd lie in bed, staring at the ceiling, wondering how many signs I missed. Wondering if she'd started pulling away before the affair or because of it. I thought about the way she used to laugh, really laugh, not the polished TV chuckle, but the one where she snorted if she was caught off guard. I hadn't heard that laugh in years. One night, maybe 3 weeks after everything imploded, I got a text from Paul. The studio guy I bribed. You might want to see this. Attached was a link to a video. I hesitated before clicking. Part of me was done with surprises. But curiosity, as always, won. It was a live stream recording, Jenna's YouTube channel. Apparently, she'd started a new series, Rebuilding. No flashy lighting, no makeup team, no script. Just her, sitting on the floor of her apartment in sweats, speaking into her phone. I lost everything, she was saying, her voice soft but steady, and I deserve to. I betrayed my marriage. I betrayed myself. I thought success would protect me from consequence, but I was wrong. She paused, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. There's a man I loved, still love, honestly. And I broke him. I didn't just break our vows, I broke him. And I live with that every day. I closed the tab. Not out of anger. But because I didn't know what to do with the strange ache in my chest. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet. But it also wasn't rage anymore. I started going to therapy a few days later. Yeah, I know, typical post-breakup move, right? But I wasn't there to talk about Jenna. Not really. I needed to understand why it had taken that much pain to finally choose myself. Why I'd let my needs go quiet for so long. Why I thought love meant sacrificing your voice to keep the peace. The therapist, her name was Carla, listened more than she spoke. She had this calm way of tilting her head when I said something honest, like she was nodding to the truth I hadn't heard in my own voice before. One session, I said, I think I was more in love with the idea of us than the actual person she became. And Carla just nodded and said, sometimes, we grieve the story more than the person. That hit me like a freight train. Because she was right. I wasn't just mourning a woman. I was mourning a version of myself that no longer existed. The husband, the partner, the man who thought he had forever mapped out in quiet routines and whispered dreams. I started writing again, not for work, not for clients, just for me. Journal entries, letters I never planned to send. Some addressed to her. Some to the men I used to be. And a few to no one at all. There was something freeing in that. No audience, no judgment, just ink and truth. One rainy Sunday, I went to the bookstore Jenna and I used to visit. I don't know why, maybe nostalgia, maybe just habit. I wandered through the aisles like a ghost looking for something to haunt. That's when I saw her. Not Jenna. Someone else. She was standing in the nonfiction section, arguing with herself out loud over which book to buy. Why do I need another self-help book? I haven't even finished the last 3, she muttered, half laughing at herself. I smiled without meaning to. She caught me, smiled back, then rolled her eyes playfully. I swear I'm not talking to imaginary friends, she said, just having a minor existential crisis. Bookstores are the best place for those, I replied. She nodded, I'm Rachel. Nick, I said, shaking her hand. It felt normal. No pressure, no weight, just 2 strangers meeting on a rainy day surrounded by stories. We ended up grabbing coffee in the cafe attached to the store. Talked for an hour, then 2. She was funny, and sharp, and honest in a way that didn't feel forced. She didn't know who I was. Didn't recognize me from the headlines or the scandal. She was just talking to a guy who liked black coffee and used too many M-dashes when he wrote. It wasn't a date. Not really. But it was the first time in a long time I felt something other than hollow. I didn't tell her about Jenna. Not that day. Some stories need time before they're ready to be shared. But I walked away from that cafe with her number in my phone and a strange flutter in my chest I hadn't felt in years. Not hope. Not yet. But maybe the first breath of it. That night, I lay in bed and didn't think about Jenna. Didn't think about Mason, or revenge, or public shame. I just thought about the way Rachel laughed at her own jokes and how she said, existential, like it was a word made of sunlight. And for the first time since everything collapsed, I didn't feel broken. Just rebuilding. Not fast, not perfectly. But piece by piece. And maybe, just maybe, that was the most honest beginning I'd had in years. Things didn't turn into a fairy tale after that, not that I expected them to. But something shifted in me after meeting Rachel, a kind of quiet permission to begin again. We started texting now and then, nothing heavy, nothing deep, just light. A meme here, a comment about the weather, an occasional, have you read this, attached to a picture of a book. It wasn't romantic, not at first, but it was something. And for a man whose entire life had been gutted from the inside out, something felt like a lifeline. Weeks passed, and I saw her again, intentionally this time. We met for a walk in the park on a Saturday morning. She brought coffee, I brought 2 muffins, 1 blueberry, 1 banana nut. She chose banana nut and then admitted she hated bananas but was feeling adventurous. I laughed more in that 1 hour than I had in the last 3 months combined. She asked about my job, my favorite books, the kind of music I listened to when I couldn't sleep. I told her bits of the truth, not all of it. I wasn't hiding Jenna exactly, just not ready to unwrap that part of myself again. How do you explain to someone new that you once sabotaged 2 careers with a single broadcast out of heartbreak and rage? You don't. Not at first. You let the silence speak where the scars still ache. And hope they'll understand the story when you're finally ready to tell it. A few nights later, I got a call from my friend Caleb, one of the few who stuck around after the scandal. He sounded strange, hesitant. You might want to sit down, he said. Which, let's be honest, is never a good way to start a conversation. What's going on? I asked, already bracing for something I wouldn't want to hear. It's Jenna, he said quietly, she's suing the studio. I blinked. What? Defamation, he continued, loss of income, breach of contract, all of it. And she's naming names. Let me guess, I said, my voice going cold, mine's on that list. It will be, Caleb said, look, I don't know if she's trying to hurt you or just scrambling to save what's left, but this is going to get messy. You need to get ahead of it. My stomach turned. Of course, she would go legal. It was the only move left, the only card she hadn't played. I hung up and sat in the dark. Not angry, not scared, just tired. Tired of dragging the past behind me like a rusted chain. Tired of being caught in the wreckage of someone else's desperation. I didn't sleep that night. I drafted a statement instead. Not to release, just to write. Sometimes you need to get the poison out of your system before it starts rotting the rest of you. Jenna. You and I burned our lives down. And we both lit the match. You strayed. I retaliated. You destroyed the marriage. I destroyed your career. No one won. There's nothing left to take from me. So maybe, just maybe, we should let the ashes be. I didn't send it. What would be the point? Words like that aren't meant to land, they're just meant to leave. To free the space they occupy in your chest. The next day, I met Rachel again. I wanted to cancel. I almost did. But something in me whispered, no more hiding. We sat across from each other in a little diner with chipped coffee mugs and a jukebox that played nothing but 70s soft rock. She was telling me a story about her sister's chaotic wedding when I interrupted. Rachel, I said, swallowing hard, there's something I need to tell you. She looked up, concerned. Okay. And so I told her. Everything. From the moment I suspected Jenna was cheating to the night I filmed her at that hotel. The bribe, the broadcast, the fallout. I laid it all out like a confession, not proud, not apologizing, just honest. Rachel didn't speak for a while. She just stirred her coffee, the spoon clinking against ceramic like a ticking clock. Then finally, she said, that's a lot. I know, I said, you probably think I'm some bitter lunatic. No, she said softly, I think you're a man who was hurt and didn't know how to stop bleeding. I stared at her. She wasn't running. She wasn't judging. She was just there. Present. Processing. You're not who you were then, she added, and if you are, you're trying not to be. That hit harder than I expected. Because maybe, just maybe, it was true. The next few days were quiet. Rachel didn't text much. I didn't push. People need time to absorb the messy truth, and I respected that. Then, out of nowhere, I got an email. From Jenna. No subject line, just a single sentence in the body. Let's stop before we destroy what's left of each other. I stared at it for what felt like hours. No threats, no demands. Just resignation. Relief washed over me like cold water. She was backing down. Maybe she realized dragging this war out would only leave more bodies in its wake. I didn't reply. Didn't need to. Some endings don't deserve a punctuation mark. Just silence. A few days later, Rachel messaged me. You free for dinner? Simple, direct, no drama. Like she knew I needed something normal. We met at this little Thai place near her apartment. Sat outside under string lights with a slight breeze teasing the edges of our napkins. We didn't talk about the past. Not once. We talked about books and food and how neither of us could keep a plant alive for more than a week. She laughed at one of my dumb jokes, and for a moment, it felt like the world tilted back into alignment. Not perfectly. Not all at once. But enough. And as we walked back to our cars, she looked at me and said, You're not your worst moment, Nick. I stopped walking, turned to her. Neither are you, I replied, not even knowing if she needed to hear that, just saying it because it felt true. She smiled, nodded, and then said something I didn't expect. I don't need you to be healed, just honest. And somehow, that felt like the beginning of something real. Something earned. Not built on illusion or denial. But honesty, scars and all. Because sometimes, after everything burns down, you find that the quiet that follows isn't just silence. It's space. Space to rebuild. To rediscover. To choose. And this time, I was choosing myself. One piece at a time. There's a strange kind of silence that settles in your life after the chaos passes. Not peace exactly, but a stillness. Like the air right before a storm decides whether it's done. I started to wake up without feeling like I was drowning. My mornings weren't haunted by what-ifs. And Rachel, well, she became more than just a comforting presence. She became my anchor. Without trying, without asking. Just by being steady in a way I'd forgotten people could be. We weren't rushing anything. There were no dramatic declarations or fireworks. It was slow, simple, real. Dinner once a week turned into twice. We began spending Sundays walking through flea markets. Laughing over weird trinkets and debating the merits of bad 80s music. And for once, I didn't feel the need to perform or pretend. I was just me. But life has a way of testing you right when you think you've found your footing again. It started with a knock on my apartment door, 3 sharp raps in the middle of a Saturday afternoon. I opened it to find a man in a blazer and dark sunglasses holding a large white envelope. He didn't introduce himself, just handed it to me and said, "You've been served." Then turned and walked away without another word. I stood there staring at the envelope like it might bite. My hands felt heavy as I peeled it open. Inside were the official court documents. Jenna was moving forward with the lawsuit after all. Defamation, career sabotage, emotional distress. And yes, she named me directly. Even though she had sent that cryptic email weeks ago. Even though I thought she was done. It turned out I had underestimated just how deep her bitterness ran. I sank into the couch, the papers trembling in my hands. Not out of fear, I wasn't scared of losing money or reputation anymore. I had already lost all that. No, this was a different kind of ache. Like reopening a wound you thought had finally scabbed over. I called Caleb, my friend who still worked in the legal department at the network. He sighed when I told him. She's trying to leverage whatever sympathy she has left, he said. She probably wants a settlement more than a trial. But she'll drag my name through the mud again to get it, I muttered. That's what this is really about. Probably, he admitted, but it won't work. Too much has already come out. You're not a hero, but she's not a victim either. Just talk to a lawyer. Don't do anything stupid. That last line lingered in my ears. Because the old me. He was very capable of doing something stupid. Something reckless. Something emotionally satisfying but permanently damaging. But I wasn't that guy anymore. Or at least I was trying not to be. I called Rachel that night. Told her everything. Her voice was quiet for a long time before she finally asked. Do you want to fight her? I didn't answer right away. Because I didn't know. Did I want revenge again? Or did I just want peace? Was there even a difference anymore? I want her to stop thinking she can control the narrative, I said finally. That's not the same as wanting to hurt her, Rachel replied gently. I could almost hear her thinking through the weight of every word. You can defend yourself without setting everything on fire again. She was right. But it was hard. So hard to hold back the part of me that wanted to retaliate. That same twisted part of me that had once wired a studio's broadcast feed to play my wife's betrayal live on air. I met with a lawyer the next day, a woman named Camille who had eyes like a hawk and a voice like steel. She read through the papers and then leaned back, unimpressed. She's hoping you'll settle. This case would crumble in front of a judge. So I shouldn't be worried? I asked. She has no legal standing, Camille said, but she might have public sympathy, and if she plays it right, she could spin it into a media stunt. That's her real game here, attention, redemption, maybe a book deal down the line. Of course. Jenna didn't just want justice. She wanted a comeback. And I was the villain in her rewritten script. Camille asked if I wanted to make a public statement. I declined. I was done fighting this war in front of an audience. If Jenna wanted a stage, she'd have to build it without my help. The weeks that followed were tense but quiet. Jenna's legal team sent emails, postured, threatened. But Camille batted every shot down like it was routine. Rachel checked in every day. Not with dramatic concern, just little things. Need a coffee? Want to walk? You okay? And with each question, I felt a little less like I was falling. A little more like I was healing. One night, I told Rachel the full story, not just the scandal. But the marriage before it. The slow unraveling. The silence that grew between us before the affair even happened. She listened without flinching. She didn't offer advice or judgment. Just presence. When I finished, she reached over and took my hand. Some people burn everything down to escape, she said, you burned it to survive. That sentence sat in my chest like a stone and a feather all at once. Heavy with truth, light with release. Then she asked something I didn't expect. If this goes away, if Jenna drops it, if everything just ends, what do you want next? I blinked. Because no one had asked me that before. Everyone wanted to know what I did. What I regretted. What I lost. But never what I wanted now. I want to stop looking over my shoulder, I said quietly. I want to be able to sit in a room and not feel like someone's about to rip the rug out from under me. Rachel nodded. That's a good place to start. That night, I wrote again. Not an angry letter or a journal entry, just words. A story. Not about Jenna or the scandal. But about a man who loses everything and chooses to live anyway. Not to prove anything. Not to win. But simply because he can. It felt like breathing for the first time in years. A few days later, Camille called. She dropped the suit, she said flatly. No settlement. I asked, shocked. She couldn't find anyone to back it, she said, it died on the table. Just like that. The ghost of it, gone. I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't even feel relieved exactly. I just felt done. I went for a long walk that night. Ended up on a bench overlooking the water. The city lights danced on the waves like flickers of memory. Behind me was a trail of fire and ash. Ahead of me, something uncertain but open. And beside me, in a few minutes, I knew Rachel would be walking up with 2 coffees in hand. I didn't need redemption. Didn't need to erase the past. I just needed to stop letting it speak louder than the future. And for the first time in a long time, that felt possible. Maybe even real. You ever reach a point in your life where you realize the noise has finally stopped? Where your heartbeat isn't racing every time your phone buzzes? Where you can sit with your own thoughts and not feel like they're about to pull you under? That was me. A few weeks after the lawsuit was dropped. Sitting on my balcony in the early morning, a mug of bitter coffee in my hands. Watching the sun spill gold across the skyline. And for once, not waiting for something to break. I had gone through hell. Watched my marriage explode on live television. Lost friends, work, trust, even parts of myself. But somehow, I'd come out the other side with something I never expected to find again. Peace. Not perfection, not revenge, not a dramatic ending where the bad guys are punished and the hero walks off into the sunset. Just peace. And Rachel, of course. She didn't try to save me. That's what made her different. She just stood beside me, day after day. No demands, no pressure. Just warmth and honesty. Like sunlight through cracked glass, quiet, but enough to see the world clearly again. Then, out of nowhere, it happened, the last twist in this long, cruel story. A phone call. It came from a number I didn't recognize, but something in me, some morbid curiosity or maybe just closure, made me answer it anyway. Hello. There was a pause, then a voice I hadn't heard in months. Flat, tired, but unmistakable. Hey, it's Jenna. My throat tightened. For a second I didn't say anything, just stared at the trees outside my window swaying in the wind like they could whisper me advice. She spoke again. I'm not calling to fight. I'm not calling to start anything. I don't know why I'm calling. I almost hung up. I almost told her to never contact me again. But something in her voice, a kind of brokenness I hadn't heard before, made me stay on the line. What do you want, Jenna? I asked quietly. I guess I just wanted to say it out loud. That I ruined everything. That I made choices that felt right in the moment and I didn't realize how much they'd cost me. I swallowed hard, feeling the old bitterness rise in my chest like bile. But I kept my voice steady. You made your choices. You knew what you were doing. I did, she whispered, but I didn't know who I was hurting most. I thought I was taking control. I thought I deserved more than what we had. She paused, her breath catching a little. I keep telling myself you destroyed me. That you humiliated me on purpose. But the truth is, I did it first. I betrayed you long before you ever retaliated. I didn't know what to say to that. Because part of me wanted to shout, and I paid the price, Jenna. I paid it in full. But another part just felt tired. Why now? I finally asked, why are you saying this now? Because I'm not going to work in this industry again, she said quietly, and because everyone I used to know either pities me or avoids me. And because I saw you and Rachel together. My stomach dropped. What? Last week, she said, you were in that bookstore on 5th. I was across the street. I saw you laughing, holding her hand. A strange silence settled over the line. And then she added, softer than before. You looked happy. I haven't seen you look like that since. I don't even remember when. I exhaled slowly. And when I spoke again, I didn't speak out of spite. Just truth. She makes me feel safe, I said. I don't have to wear armor around her. I never made you feel that way, did I? Jenna asked, voice cracking. No, I said simply, you didn't. There was another pause, this one heavier. And then she said the words I never expected from her. I'm sorry. 2 words. Just that. No explanation, no justification. And for the first time, they felt real. I didn't say, I forgive you. Because I wasn't sure I did. But I didn't hang up either. I just sat there, letting the silence stretch. And maybe that was enough, for both of us. We ended the call without ceremony. No closure speech, no dramatic final goodbye. Just a shared breath of exhaustion and something resembling understanding. I stared at the phone for a long time after. And then I deleted her number. Later that day, I told Rachel everything. She didn't flinch, didn't get jealous, didn't press. She just listened, and then said, "Maybe that's what you needed." Not her words, but knowing you didn't need them anymore. She was right. Jenna's apology didn't change the past. But it did something else, it freed me from carrying her weight. I spent the next few weeks pouring myself into writing. Not just cathartic journal entries, but stories, fictional ones, twisted and raw and full of complicated people. I wrote about betrayal, yes, but also about forgiveness. About the scars we choose to keep and the ones we let go. And eventually, one of those stories got picked up by a small indie publisher. It wasn't a blockbuster deal, but it felt like something real, a step toward something that belonged to me. Not my pain, not my past, but my voice. On the day it was announced, Rachel brought over a bottle of cheap champagne and we sat on my balcony. Drinking straight from the bottle, laughing until tears ran down our faces. The city hummed below us, unaware of how much had changed in the heart of one man who used to think the world owed him something. I looked at Rachel and said, "I never thought I'd get here." "Not really." She smiled, brushing hair from her face. "You didn't get here. You walked here." Every painful, messy, honest step. I didn't need a stage anymore. Didn't need revenge or public vindication. The final broadcast had already happened. Not on TV, but in my own soul. I had seen the worst of love. The ugliest sides of trust broken. And somehow, still found something worth believing in again. And that was a story worth telling.